You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode, we're talking about the supernatural horror film Antlers, directed by Scott Cooper and released October 29th, 2021.
Ooh, I love when we do one that's more recent.
Yeah, the newer movies. This one was, just a few months ago. And I remember I went and saw it in theaters. It was one of my return to theaters movies. Quite a very heavy, dark film to go back to theaters for, but...
Yeah, it was difficult. This one, I think, man, I'm not sure I'm going to watch it again. I feel like I've had it. I've watched it twice. Yeah, it's real dark and depressing.
I will say, coming off, right off the top, our opinions on it. Personally, I like the movie. I think it's very well done. There's a lot of little things in there. The Wendigo mythology and legend, I have always been very fascinated and intrigued by. It's something I know very well, and it's something I've always really liked. And so it definitely fit that for me, and I think it's a great movie. But it's one of those movies that's going to go on that list of films. I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I could watch it again, because it's very tough and it's hard. Like there's a couple movies like that I really liked, but they crushed my soul, and so I don't know if I can be put through that again.
This one was pretty soul crushing. I think you connect to all of the characters, especially the leads, and you want something good to come out at the end, especially for Lucas. Man, that little boy, I just wanted to pick him up and give him the biggest hug and feed him all of the good things. Pancakes, ice cream, whatever he wanted. Because he was just such a sad little boy.
Yeah.
It was really difficult to get through. And I watched it twice. And like I said, I think I probably won't watch it again. Like you, I was really into the Wendigo story, like the mythology, the folklore. I liked that. I was really into it. But it was so depressing that, we're going to have a discussion. That is for sure.
Yeah. It was like crushing a can of Coke. So depressing? Is that what?
Oh my gosh. You're coming at me with that already. Man.
You gotta lighten it up a little bit, because this is not going to be a very punny, snarky, light podcast.
No, it isn't.
So we gotta do what I can when I can.
I remember saying that to you, too, after we recorded the last one and decided on this one. It's not going to be the lighthearted, fun, like Attack the Block or like Black Sheep. It's definitely not going to be like that.
Yeah.
Even like 30 Days of Night, which you completely snarked it up on. It's not going to be one of those. It's going to be a real deep, dark discussion. But there's a lot of good in this movie as far as the way it was put together and the acting and cinematography. Fantastic. Was a good movie.
Yeah, I think the heaviness, there's another episode of our podcast, another movie we've done that I could compare kind of the tone and heaviness going into this and stuff. It's The Monster that we did last season.
Yes, I was thinking about that one as well. That was one that, didn't have a super happy ending. There were a few bright spots, but that was a difficult one.
Yeah.
I think we ended up, when we released that episode, we had a trigger warning on it because it touched on things that were difficult to watch. I mean, traumatic.
Yep.
So, well, I think we should get started the way that we always do before we get too deep in the conversation with a few behind-the-scenes things. It was filmed in and around Hope, British Columbia. There's no surprise that Guillermo del Toro was an executive producer on this one. It had his name all over it.
He loves his real dark, emotional creatures.
He does. He does. So the screenplay was written by C. Henry Chaisson, Scott Cooper, and Nick Antosca. Was adapted from Antosca's short story, The Quiet Boy, which I happened to find online. So we'll have to post this in the comments when we share this episode on Facebook. We'll have to make sure that we do that because I found it and I have the link. I read through some of it, but I didn't want to connect it too much in my head when we were, talking about the movie. So I'm going to reserve it to watch after, much like I did with Mama, because I found the short film that they did on that as well.
Yeah.
So this one was another of a slew of movies that were delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Was originally supposed to be out in April 2020, was not released, as we know, until October 2021, around the same time as Last Night in Soho and some of the other movies that we've covered. The tagline, one of the early taglines was, "Pray it desires, not you," which I found interesting and a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
Could not get any budget information, but I did find out that it grossed $18.3 million at the box office. It's 99 minutes. And Pake, what do you have for us for a synopsis?
Right. In an isolated Oregon town, a middle school teacher and her sheriff brother become embroiled with her enigmatic student, whose dark secrets lead to terrifying encounters with an ancestral creature.
Ooh, I like this one. I think it covers all the bases.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. I feel like we shouldn't hold back. I feel like we've already started the discussion right off the top of the episode. Yeah. So I feel like we should probably just continue the way that we always do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the best place to start has to be, you mentioned Carrie Russell and her portrayal as Julia Meadows.
Yes. She had Lucas had his own trauma and child abuse to deal with, but so did Julia. She was really haunted. She's this teacher. She's haunted by her own past as an abused child with an alcoholic father. And it seems she ran away or got away. And now she's come back to kind of reconnect with her brother Paul.
Yeah, because there's the rough stuff there. They don't go into full detail about her past and her father. Just enough disturbing imagery to help you get the gist of what she dealt with. And it's sickening, obviously. But yeah, she got to a point where she was able to escape and get away, but then she kind of has this strained relationship with Paul, her brother, because she left home, which ended up just kind of abandoning him and leaving him there with an abusive father still to deal with.
Yes.
So after her father's death, that's why she's returned home to this home that Paul is still living in to kind of, reconnect with her brother and help this relationship forward.
Yeah. You could tell that she's had a rough go of moving on from all of that trauma because there are multiple times that she's in the grocery store and she's eyeing the alcohol, and she doesn't give into it. She doesn't buy any. And I'm thinking that's got to be taking a lot of willpower, because given what we learned throughout this movie about what went on with her dad, you couldn't blame her for wanting an escape from it. We never really learn what Paul went through so much. Yeah. But we do get the taste of what Julia went through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as they're at the hospital deciding, kind of arguing with each other about taking in Lucas, we have that little conversation between them. Yeah, because Lucas it's clear he's damaged physically, mentally, emotionally, all of it. And Julia's wanting to take him home kind of in this sense of responsibility for him, as she says to Paul. I almost want to keep saying Jesse because I love Jesse Plemons so much.
I know.
I just want to call him by his name. But
he was great in Fargo. Did you see him in Fargo? He's been in so many things, and he's just done such a great job.
Oh, I mean, yeah, his rap sheet was like Jesse Plemons is a treasure. Yeah, Breaking Bad, Fargo, Black Mirror, Game Night, Judas and the Black Messiah, Jungle Cruise, and a whole lot more. But like those are like the like big ones that I can think of like on the top of my head that I've seen recently or like really liked.
Yeah.
He's so good. But yeah, but talking with Paul, again, I have to remind myself it's not Jesse Plemons.
It's Paul, not Jesse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like this place of responsibility being his teacher and knowing that he has nobody else to go to. But then also, I think Paul kind of is right. He has a point. I think the way he goes about it definitely hits her the wrong way.
Yes.
But I don't think he's wrong. He has a point in saying that what she's also doing is trying in a way to fight against another cycle of abuse is because of her own past and her own things and demons that she dealt with as a kid.
Yes.
That she's trying to kind of put those experiences or use them to say, no, that's why I have to help Lucas, because I have to get him out of that kind of cycle and make sure that he is raised better and can have somebody to talk to and not get lost in all of that like I could have been.
Mm-hmm. I think it must have been traumatic for her, and not only what she went through as a child, but thinking about coming back to the town where it all happened in, and then going back and staying in the house.
Yeah.
Because she has that vision of her dad, like, coming up behind her while she's playing the piano and putting his arm around her neck and starting to touch her inappropriately. And you have to think that reliving that or being back in that place would have a negative effect on a person. I can't imagine doing that after everything she's been through. I mean, she's a little ragged. You can tell she's a little bit ragged. Her emotions and her demeanor, she's trying to deal with it the best way that she can. She's trying to acclimate to this school. And we get the impression that the father who committed suicide did so not that long ago. So this is all kind of brought all of this to the forefront with her again.
Yeah. And yeah, dealing with all that and then trying to manage a somewhat normal life. Yeah, back as a teacher, which I think she's a great teacher. She has a great heart, and you can really see that she wants to be not just a teacher, but somebody who can connect with these kids.
Yes.
And I do love, I kind of had to laugh at, we see her first time in the classroom. She's like, the little girl, Jasmine. She's just straight up ignoring her with her hand up as she's like just jumping around, trying to like point out like the really quiet kids and try to like bring them out a little bit.
Engage with them. Yeah.
And finally she's like, fine.
Okay.
It was like, I'm sure you could ask any teacher, that there's always going to be like that kid in their class that just knows everything and is not afraid to say it.
It was interesting because she went ahead and she said, well, Goldilocks, is a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
And then we transition not much later. Lucas has his story that he tells everyone in the class. And it's a very different tale of three bears, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's reflective of the life he's been leading, especially the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I actually did write down word for word his story because it was that poignant to me. So, of good, he didn't write anything down, but it's his life he's living, and he's just able to pull that from his heart and from his head, which, man, to think that a kid is going through that to where he's like, oh, I can just tell this story, and he's already like figured out a way to like code everything, and it's terrible.
It's awful. It is awful, but it's quite an interesting way of telling Lucas's story in this movie.
Yeah, because he says, once there were 3 bears that lived in a dark and wet cave up above a small town. Big Bear, Little Bear, and Baby Bear. Big Bear used to take care of the little bears, but Big Bear got sick, lost his job, and his insides turned black. One day, Little Bear came home, and Big Bear and Baby Bear were different. Big Bear's sickness had gotten worse. Big Bear had become more angrier and meaner because they had no food, no meat. but they had each other.
I know. Oh, it's haunting even to hear it again because you think about it. And we saw some of that because we got to see Frank was not the model father. I mean, he was making meth. I mean, that was his job.
Yeah,
basically.
He was leaving Aiden out in the truck while he went to his mineshaft meth lab with his buddy, and that's just kind of what he was doing. But I mean, he was good enough to when he realized something was really dangerously wrong, that he built all those lock mechanisms and stuff on the door and told his sons to lock him up in there and not let him out no matter what.
Yeah.
But at least he had the foresight for that.
He did. That whole flashback scene, which I don't know if we should talk about it now or once we get to Lucas, but there's a whole flashback scene where Lucas sees or remembers what happened basically when his dad came home from the mine.
Yeah. But yeah, back on Julia as kind of a teacher and even like mentor kind of thing. And this is where I related to her a lot watching this movie. Even in the theaters when I saw it the first time, and I'm just like, kind of like with you, that first scene where we see like Lucas walking home by, himself school. And I had that same thing. I was like, this kid just needs a hug and somebody to talk to him. And because so I was like, especially without the whole murderous Wendigo thing.
Yeah.
I related to Julia of seeing Lucas and being like, this is the kind of kid that I would see as needing some extra support and someone to talk to. I mean, because that's something that I do in my real life is working with kids like Lucas, at least in, some similarities. And so seeing that kind of connection that she's got there, I really could relate to that, especially, after his story that he told and then going to the nurse's office with him after his bullies kind of beat up on him a little bit. You see that worry where she really starts, and it because of her past that she oversteps her boundaries and she gets more invested than she should. But she's worried about his home life and stuff because she's seeing the scars on his body and seeing how malnourished he is. And so she, is it a little inappropriate? Definitely. It oversteps her bounds, but she decides to follow him when she sees him, this last minute little thing. Follows him to the ice cream shop and brings him in there. And her conversation with him there, again, very familiar territory for me in some ways. And I like, and I think, she did such a great job getting him to open up and be more comfortable with talking by finding those common grounds and giving him just enough to really like intrigue him to talk to her more and then try to, and it's not like she's trying to like get information out of him and being, insincere, but you have to find that balance where you have to not like trick a kid into trusting you, but you have to build trust slowly and you have to kind of work with them on their level. And she was doing a really good job with that, until it got too hard for him to answer once she was getting really close to home on, well, what about your brother? He's able to talk about Aiden until it gets to, well, why is your dad teaching him at home then? Why is he not at school? And what's your dad doing? And it gets too much. He's like, I don't have a good answer for you. So he's just
it's time to leave. Time to leave.
Yeah.
And don't follow me.
Right.
Again.
He can't just be like, oh yeah, my dad's, teaching Aiden how to be a horrifying creature man and eat raw meat in the attic and snarl at people. So, it's doing fine.
It's not something you want. Definitely not. Yeah. I felt for her because I feel like she really was connecting with him. I mean, talking about ice cream, is ice cream your favorite vegetable? And talking about cheeseburgers and donuts as a fruit. Like, the conversation they had was so endearing.
Yeah.
Because she was really trying to connect with him. And then talking, telling him that her mom was dead also. Like, connecting with him on a level so he can understand, well, I'm not the only one whose mom died, Yeah. And I think that was really important for him. I think that's where things started to build.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, especially later on in the film, there's one moment near the end that she and Lucas have to communicate on a level about something that's incredibly difficult that she has to do. And you could tell the emotion in that scene really affected me.
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't want to accept it, that was the fate, but it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think she was incredible and did, a lot of her choices. Yeah, I mean, she stepped over the line a lot. I mean, we had that scene where her and Paul are talking. She's like, you went to Frank Weaver's house. You can't do that. He was very, and I mean, he's right. She really doesn't have that jurisdiction, sadly enough, no matter what you piece together and think about a kid's home life. As a teacher or as somebody, that's not your place. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. And
even with the best of intentions, it's not the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Also, going back to when they were talking about Goldilocks in the classroom, she said the moral of the story is don't take something that's not yours. And that kind of stuck with me throughout this movie, too, because I'm thinking, I don't think she's trying to take Lucas, but maybe she doesn't realize that by inserting herself into this situation, it is like she's taking him. And I think that pissed the Wendigo off even more.
Yeah. And she starts, she goes to the house the first time. Nobody's there because Lucas is out harvesting meat for his family. We call it that.
Watching the birds fly overhead to see where the next carcass is.
Yeah.
So bad.
And luckily she decides pretty fast not to stick around.
Yes.
Here's a couple of sounds and it's like, oh, I'm going to leave now because this is not my place. She goes to talk to Paul about it, but yeah, that's not her thing. So she does. She talks to Paul, ask about Frank Weaver and trying to figure out that information, which, full on addict, not really a good guy. But unfortunately, again, just the way that everything is, he is all that Lucas and Aiden have. So that's just kind of how legally things have stacked up. I was like, it's a small town, it seems, and there's a lot of drugs and a lot of poverty. And we see Paul complaining about like, I don't want to evict another family, but that's what we have to do. And,
yeah. I remember she told him at that time, you didn't have to run, but I think he felt he had to because the town needed that guidance because the other sheriff, I think, did a good job and they needed to have someone in control of the town.
Yeah.
I remember that there was one point a little bit later in the film when the bully goes missing and they talk about how kids stay home to, run drugs for their parents or because they might smell like meth.
Yeah, that's what the principal had said, Ellen.
Yeah.
Has said, because, is even asking, well, Lucas is here at school. It was like, but I'm, because Julia brings his drawings and things to her and is concerned. And she's like, no, I see, these could be classic signs of abuse, but there's only so much we can do. Our lines are pretty thin. It's like, I'm more worried about Aiden, his younger brother, who isn't in school. And that's, it tells her that, where it's like a lot of these kids in those cases then, are just, accessories to drug running and things like that from the parents. And that's kind of more she's worried about. Of course, she does follow up on it and heads over there to check it out herself. Unfortunately, she doesn't turn around and go back like
no,
like Julia does.
She actually goes inside.
Yeah, she keeps pushing through a little bit through the rancid smells and disturbing sounds and locks. Checks a little too much into what's happening.
Yeah.
And gives Frank's human form one last big meal.
Before he breaks into
horrifying metamorphosis. Yeah.
Oh, the husk. The husk. Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Because we're jumping around a little bit, but not too much. So I'm trying to find, all right, where are we at? Yeah. So after that happens, of course, she's... a missing persons report is filed pretty quickly on her. Paul is asking Julia about that. It's like, well, I told her to go check on
yes,
the Weaver place. He's like, oh, shit. Why? This is why we don't do this.
Yes. Yes. And so Paul goes over to check it out and doesn't see anyone home, so he doesn't really go in. goes back home.
Leaving Lucas to do murder scene cleanup for the night.
Oh my goodness. A 12-year-old cleaning up blood and dragging bodies around and covering up cars.
Mm-hmm.
So sad. So sad. He's a 12-year-old having to take care of everything. He is, the little bear. He's having to deal with all of this.
But yeah, after that, then I don't have a lot of notes on Julia until kind of the end, and because then we focus a little bit more on the Wendigo and things that are going on there. And Lucas's story a little more.
I liked their visit to Sheriff Stokes.
Yeah. Because
he basically shows them the antler that they found at the mine and says, here's the book, here's the picture, it's a Wendigo. He says it's a diabolical wickedness that devours mankind. And then he goes on and tells a little bit more of a story that the story goes that during a severe winter, a lost hunter resorted to cannibalism, and after feasting on human flesh, he became crazed and became an anamorphic spirit that roamed the countryside for victims. And Wendigos are known to be eternally starving, and feasting only makes them hungrier and weaker. They can only be killed in its weakened state and only by extinguishing its beating heart, forcing it to search for another host.
Mm-hmm. Which those two is, I was like, it's a little exposition-y, but
yeah,
it works. It does the trick.
Paul's not having any of it.
No.
But Julia, I think, is on board with, okay, well, it could be happening. How do we stop this? How do we fix this? As we learn...
The two big things that he says about, extinguishing the heart, that comes into play. Like, she remembers that.
Yes.
Very well, and that was great. But then the second half of that.
Oh, man.
Is the really unfortunate part is, you saying that it, leaves that host, but will look for another.
Yes. One that it found.
Mm-hmm. Just so happened to be an already kind of infected and weakened Aiden standing right over there. It was an easy jump, really. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So depressing.
So we've kind of gone over a lot of what happens to the hospital and deciding to take him in, and after they find the bodies of Ellen and Clint, the bully kid, that's where Julia finally makes that call that we're taking Lucas, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Takes him there, which then Lucas is even saying, well, my dad's not dead. He's just different now. That was my new dad.
My new dad.
And him and Aiden are going to want to take me to the mine, and is exactly as he expects. Yeah,
they do.
They're still looking for him. And she just wants to protect him. I was like, well, don't hunker down in a room with giant windows. That's not the best spot. There's many other rooms that are better hiding spots. But okay.
And she gets up to look out the window and tells him not to move. And of course he's going to move. Because at that point, he loves his father and he wants to be with his father and his brother. Like, that is what he wants.
It ties into his Three Bears story he told, where he feels a sense of responsibility for his dad and his brother, no matter what they are or what has happened.
Exactly. I mean, he went to great lengths to clean things up and do everything that he did after his father killed the principal. Mm-hmm. And so he definitely, he even tells her, he's going to come for me. My dad's going to come for me. And of course he did. Mm-hmm. He took out Deputy Dan first. And then Paul goes out to try to see what's going on, and he injures him, which I question, is that how you infect someone, is by...
That's what I think is, because we get the first infection obviously is Frank and his friend that was his meth partner down there.
Yeah.
Where Frank must have been injured, because we see the other guy didn't make it out of that. He's the body that they found in the woods. Half of it in the woods, and the other half still in the mine. And so, I think it's just like that infection takes place. And so that's what we see. I mean, Dan is killed right away.
Yes.
He's straight up impaled. But with Paul, luckily, in that moment at least, yeah, he was stabbed through the arm, but that was it. And then he was knocked unconscious.
Yeah.
But he was stabbed through the arm, and I think that is an infection that then takes hold and takes place.
Yeah. I wondered if it was a way that the Wendigo marked its victims in case it needed to search for a new host.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't see Aiden get attacked.
Mm-hmm.
But he turned into, like, he was sick too.
Yeah.
And spitting up the black. So, I'm not sure.
Yeah. And after those things took place, Julia pretty much realizes exactly what happened when Lucas is gone. No, so takes off to the mine after him, takes Paul with her, because he's not gonna not go with her, even though he, like, passes out in the truck. And she just leaves him sitting out there anyway and calls an ambulance for him. But heads inside to do what she can. Finds Lucas and Aiden in the mine. Also the Wendigo, which is feasting on a bear. Turns around to face her, literally. The face of Frank.
That was so weird.
Hanging off the front of it. I'm like, God, what?
And then it slides off. Oh my God.
Yeah, just super creepy. And then I was and then there's this weird moment because she's like freaking out and shooting at it. I'm like, girl, what are you shooting at? Like, it is a marvel you don't hit one of those boys with that gun, because you're just firing all over the place.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of antlers.
Yeah.
It's a whole bunch of antlers. It's not a conventional monster.
Yeah. One thing about the Wendigo that I noticed, like in this, I noticed it throughout the entire movie, but what's cool is whenever it's kind of right there nearby or being, dealt with, you just see these little embers floating around in the air.
Yeah.
And of course that's because, you extinguish the heart. It was pretty literal because it is kind of this flame, this burning
flame
of a heart. And so there's just embers that follow the Wendigo around, and they're just floating in the air anytime he's around, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think she had some major guts fighting that thing with nothing but a flare and a pole. She weakens it really well, and then Lucas makes that decision to swoop in and get the not really killing blow, but debilitating blow with the knife from behind. And then again, talking about Soak's story, she remembers, so she cuts out the heart, makes sure it's dead. But yeah, that other part of that story, like we talked about, Aiden just happens to be there, which, man, it is a rough moment. It's maybe one of the most depressing, heart-wrenching, but also like disturbing and disgusting things I've seen in any movie. It is just, after this Wendigo spirit has moved into Aiden and he's slowly transforming, and it's just like the sounds he's making, these little like squeals and screams, and this kind of like blank look on his face while his chest and his eyes are glowing, and he's just oozing this black, and it's nightmare fuel to the nth degree. Like, I was like,
no, you knew what was coming. You knew it. And she had to talk the way that Julia had to she basically got down to Lucas's level and talked to him about his brother, saying Aiden is never going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. He's like, you know what I have to do? He's like, no, he's just sick, but he'll get better. He's like,
he's not going to.
He won't get better. And Lucas had seen everything that had happened with his dad. He does know better.
Yeah.
And he does. He turns away as Julia kills Aiden. And at least they did show us. It's one of those things that if you're looking, you'll notice it. It's hard to notice. But the antlers do kind of what we saw, that transformation with the husk of Frank's body. We do see those same antlers start to protrude out of Aiden's mouth.
Yes.
Right before she stabs him. So we do know for a fact it is too late. And
it's too late. It
does make the right call.
Yeah, she did. But watching her have that conversation with Lucas, it broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all Lucas has left. And you can tell that he's fighting to save his brother's life, not realizing at first that he can't. And as he accepts that she has to do it, it's just remarkable to watch that scene play out. The young actor who played Lucas, Jeremy T. Thomas, did such a wonderful job in this role, playing this haunted, sad, abused child. He knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen this actor do anything. But I mean, he's definitely one to kind of keep an eye out for in future roles and see what he's got, because he really, man, yeah.
Yeah. That scene in particular really stood out to me. And there were he just played that part, the part of the abused child, so well. Everything that he was doing, it just stood out to me. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what he does next. Mm-hmm. We seem to cover movies where they have really strong child or teenage actors. So
yeah, we have had a good number.
We have. It's great.
It's always fun to find those kind of little hidden gems and some things.
I know.
Or then kind of talk about another heavy movie that we talked about, like The Impossible.
Young Tom Holland.
Seeing an actor that I had kind of was introduced to by his role in Marvel and becoming Spider-Man, and then getting to go back and see his first role when he was really young and be like, oh shit, this kid had it from the get-go.
He did. I love getting to pick these movies and introduce you to that, because I think it's great.
Yeah.
There's still so much out there for us to cover.
Oh yeah. So I think that about rounds out all of my notes on Julia, in case you had some more.
No, I think we have discussed everything that I had on her.
All right. So then I guess it is time we can jump a little deeper into, we've talked about a lot of stuff about other characters. That's usually how it goes, is in our big first character, we kind of throw in a lot of notes and thoughts about everybody else too, because it's all intertwined.
Characters It is.
Communicate and live and breathe with each other throughout these movies. And so everything is their connections. But I do have a lot of other story to talk about with Lucas Weaver himself.
Me too.
Poor Lucas, we see right here at school. He's shy, has a horrible monster creature dad locked up in the attic.
Oh, goodness.
And he has to deal with these douchey little bullies.
Ugh.
So it's just stacking things.
Yeah, the sock monkey that Clint was playing with. And
I guess was his, that Clint had taken out of his bag and then was mocking him and they gave it back. Or I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
But he's definitely bothered by the teasing about this, because I kind of took it as, if this was his, I mean, it's definitely going to be like a comfort item, and
they've destroyed it.
To be teased about it like that, so he saws its head off out of frustration, which, as you do.
And fills it with something stinky. At least that's what I thought. Or do you think it just stunk because of the environment he lived in? Because he cuts that monkey's head off and puts it in Clint's bag.
Yeah, well, there's actual,
poop, right?
The kids were saying, oh, is that dog shit?
Yeah.
And then we see him, trying to make him eat it.
Yes.
Afterwards, when he jumped back. Yeah, he strikes back at his bully, but it goes south pretty quick. Luckily, Julia's there to kind of break it up, and then that's where, going back to talking about her, where then she sees a lot of things where she's like, okay, she decides to invest a little bit more into him. But, but he's also, this provider. He's put himself for himself, but also his family, where he's having to keep bringing animals that he can find home as food. And Aiden for a while is still able to eat normal food, so he's also trying to scrounge up fast food or snacks or whatever he could find for Aiden. I mean, he took out a skunk with a rock unscathed. That's some skill. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I found it really poignant when he brought the tray to feed his father and Aiden, and Aiden's came in a little styrofoam container, and his father's was just slapped on the tray. I think you could see the two different levels of progression at that time of where they were at.
Yeah. Yeah, which it's just whatever he can scrounge up. So sometimes it's not enough. And that's another incredibly heartbreaking scene for me, is he's sitting there, as he does every night, just drawing or doing whatever. And then you hear Aiden whimpering and calling to him from, through the door, telling him he's hungry, and he just has to put his headphones on and drown him out because there's nothing he can do. And, it's rough.
It's very rough.
But yeah, then the next time we see him bringing this, candy or a treat or some kind of cookies or something to Aiden, and then, Frank, or what used to be Frank, is feeding, we see that like when it's feeding, it's kind of zoned in a little more. Kind of reminds me of a certain creature from a certain show I covered on a different podcast.
Oh, really? I wonder what one that is.
Right, yeah, and we've seen, it's kind of lost all of its hair, and this heart is glowing from the inside. But also Aiden is getting worse because we see that, he eats these snacks that Lucas gives him, and
he can't eat
cause
them.
him to cough up blood, and he's looking rough. So he's clearly headed down the same path as their dad. And I guess it kind of becomes that way where the only thing they can consume at that point is raw meat and raw flesh. It's this, becoming something inhuman.
So sad.
So we did talk about, while he's in the hospital bed, and then even while he's gazing out the window, we kind of get like a mix of the night and then the day after, where he's getting these little flashbacks and thinking about what happened. And Frank was infected at the mine, I guess, and but he realizes he's a danger, builds the locking mechanisms, says not to let him out. And then Aiden starts showing some signs of the infection as well, and so while he still has some kind of his mind there, pulls the younger boy in with him, shuts the door, and leaves Lucas alone on the outside, really.
I mean, Frank had this little interaction with Aiden at the beginning when he goes out to the truck and he says, "Don't leave this truck or drive off with it." Thinking like that Aiden was going to drive off and drive the truck. And it's this little moment of like humor between a father and son.
Yeah.
That we saw.
Because I do that kind of same thing. It's those little jokes and stuff like that are fun. I was going to say I do it kind of on a different level, but it's like people go, "Oh, that's so mean." But you have to know my relationship with Riley.
Yes.
Because I take care of a kid who's in a wheelchair, fully, can't move. He is wheelchair bound. And I will tease him and stuff like that sometimes, or I'll set his wheelchair somewhere. It's like, "Okay, go to the bathroom." I was like, "You better not leave. You better be there when I come back." I'll say stuff like that to him. It's like, "You better not run away." So it's just kind of this like sweet little jokey thing that,
Yeah, I'm sure Riley gets a kick out of it too.
Oh, absolutely. It gets, again, if you've known him as long as I do, you can get away with those kind of things because he knows it's out of love. And so, get to like some stairs and then just start heading up and be like, "Okay, I'll meet you up there." Come on, where you?
Yeah.
I was like, dude,
you guys have such a great friendship. You really do. It's cool.
Yep. But one thing I did notice about that scene, the very opening scene, it's one of those like tiny little annoyances in a movie that's like in the script,
dear,
because they have to connect the characters. But the way he goes, "Well, I'll finish up and then we'll go get your brother, Lucas." I was like, why would you say it that way? You have two sons. He has one brother. He knows what his brother. It's like, pick one or the other. You say, "I'll finish up and then we'll go get your brother," or "Finish up and we'll go get Lucas." But to say it that way, it's like, do you not think he knows what his brother's name is?
Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he has selective amnesia and then forgets his brother's name.
It's just like one little thing. It's like those things I pick up on. I was like, it's in the script. It's in the dialogue that way to be like, when we see Lucas later, we'll be like, "Oh, that's the brother." But just out of in a realism, I'm like, why would you say it that way? That's so weird.
I know. That does seem a little bit off. It does. There were little moments, though, too, between Lucas and Aiden. Like, at one point, his dad, Aiden tells Lucas, "Well, Dad says God is dead." And so Lucas is having to reassure him and talk about, "Well, remember what Mom told us?" Trying to reassure him while he's still a person before he transforms or starts to transform. And you can see how much Lucas loves his brother. It's just so hard for him the entire time.
A lot of it is for Aiden, but I mean, there is still that connection with his dad, even after he's not human anymore. Again, going back to while he's at Julia and Paul's house and telling him, that his dad's not dead. It's just not the same one that, not the same dad that he was. It's like, and he's got Aiden with him, but Aiden's not going to understand. So I need to be there for him because Aiden needs me. And then going back to his dad, then he says, "I just have to feed him and he'll love me." And it's just this sense of belonging and needing that, even though he's right there in this living room with Julia, who's done all this for him.
It's not the
same. Still has that connection there.
Yeah. It's his dad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and his dad, even when his father is telling him, you know, you're going to have, Daddy's sick right now, you need to leave me alone, and he goes in the room and closes the door. He was just trying to protect his kids. I still wonder, though, about all of the bruises or scars that Lucas had on his back. Like, how did they get there? What did his father do to him?
Yeah.
But at that point, you get this sense that he's just trying to protect his children from him. Because he knows something bad is going on. Yeah. And he's trying to protect them. It's like, you need to lock me in here. Don't let me out.
Mm-hmm. That is all of my Lucas notes, I believe. Do you have more?
Oh. Well, the only other thing that I have is basically when Clint the bully gets it by Lucas's father, who's now the Wendigo.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas doesn't waste any time, like, hanging around saying, you need to run. Lucas just takes off on his own and doesn't say anything to the bully.
Yeah, no.
And leaves him there. It's like, okay.
Yeah, his father took care of the son's bully in a kind of a horrific way, but
yes.
He did.
Yeah. Might have been just enough to be kind of standing there looking at him. And for Lucas to say, yeah, that's my monster, and so if you don't leave me alone, he's going to come visit you. Because that might have got the point across without having to actually kill him.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can reason with a Wendigo. Not based on what I've seen in this one and in other movies. There's no way.
Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, next character to really talk about, I've got a few little notes. We talked about a lot, but again, Paul, going back to Paul, Julia's brother, talked about Jesse Plemons. He's great. I just say, I was like, put a bell around your neck or something. You keep scaring the shit out of your sister. You gotta.
He did, though. I mean, but one of those times she was in the middle of that, like, memory or dream or whatever of her father. So I can get that pretty much. I think being in that house would be kind of haunting for her.
Yeah. He has a line that is pretty poignant again, and just like, oof. After, Stokes is telling him about the body that they find in the woods, which is the guy that Frank was with. And then Julia kind of overhears, so he fills her in and tells her what's going on. And he says, it was probably a bear or a cougar, something. And she goes, Jesus. And he responds, well, from what he just told me, I don't think Jesus was anywhere to be found.
Yes. I tried to find that line. I was going to write that down, but then I also knew that you would write it down. I just knew. I'm like, no, Pake's got that covered. I'm not gonna write it down.
Mm-hmm.
He also says something really haunting at the end when they're watching Lucas. They're down kind of like it wasn't a beach, but it was at the shore basically. And they're talking about what Lucas would grow up to be and if they should, because she's really determined to take care of him because he has nobody else.
Yeah.
But also not knowing what will happen, what he will turn into if he will become a Wendigo or whatever. And he basically says to her, do you think you can kill something you love?
Right.
And then at the end of the movie, we really see she's going to have to do just that.
Yeah. Yes, says it's like living with a tiger cub.
Yes.
You don't know what he's going to grow into.
Mm-hmm.
And then, asks, do you think you could kill? And after saying that, he coughs up this, like, evil black bile that we've seen that, the Wendigo actually may have chosen him to jump into. So that question hits just a little different.
It does.
And again, we talked about, he was stabbed. And as far as we know, Lucas wasn't actually ever hurt by the Wendigo. And they don't really explain the system at that much as to where do you have to have been infected, quote unquote, or whatever to be the next part or not. We don't know. But if that's the case, I mean, we never see Lucas actually injured or hurt or touched by the Wendigo in any way, so it would just be Paul, which, that makes sense. We do see Lucas was down by the water, and, Julia's rubbing some, like, blood off the corner of his mouth, like, where he was, like, eating some, like, raw meat or fish or something. And it's like, well, was that maybe just because he's convinced himself that he's going to become what he is, and so he's just preemptively doing that anyway? But so I would think about that personally. My viewpoint, I think Lucas is fine. At least I hope so.
I hope so too.
And really, it's Paul that's got a rough road ahead.
And that it doesn't take that long, because Frank's metamorphosis took like 3 to 4 weeks. So we know that this is the beginning of the end. This is the first cough. And then it's going to go all downhill from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very dark movie.
Dark. Oh, so dark.
Oh. So that is all my notes I have on characters. I might have some extra, I've got a couple extra little, like, Wendigo things, but do you have
Me
any
too.
more
I went to look
characters?
up a couple of things. I have a few things in production notes, and then I actually just went to look into where the term even comes from.
Nice.
Because I was curious, and I read this Comic Watch article, and this is what it said. The Wendigo is a mythological creature from the Algonquian-speaking First Nations in North America. They are monsters that have an insatiable appetite for human flesh and are the embodiment of gluttony, greed, and excess. They are never satisfied and always starving.
Yeah. We see, the opening of this movie is talking about basically, if you want to look at it as like a vaguely climate change, the way we're treating the earth kind of message is what is going on in this, opening thing. It is this malevolent spirit of the Wendigo, and it even says right there, "Pray it desires not you."
Yes. The Mother Earth has been pillaged.
Yeah, and so the Wendigo spirit in this movie is brought about by, like, human greed that's leading to damaging the earth, specifically this mountain area of Oregon. We hear some of the radio reports and stuff on the TV about mountain mining and bringing back the coal industry in the area and what it's been doing to kind of the area and to so
yeah,
they set it up that way a little bit. It's like, and that's why, yeah,
that was a real creepy thing to start. I knew I was going on a ride of a depressing movie when it starts with things like Mother Earth has been pillaged, stripped of her life's blood. A violation that has awakened the malevolent spirit, seeking the lost, the frail, the depraved. Pray it desires not you. Yeah, you're in for it when you start with that right off the bat.
Yeah.
What else do you have on the Wendigo?
Starts off person. So just kind of some story stuff, really. I didn't dig too deep, but just movie stuff. Just little notes of, we talked about Aiden being left out in the truck, and then Frank and his friend are down there, and they're hearing these real creepy sounds and choose to investigate these animal, in quotes, sounds. It's like, no, thank you.
No, you don't.
And they find the thing that's making the sounds, unfortunately. And Aiden goes in after him, and all is very downhill fast for that kid. Obviously, he didn't get out of there himself a little, completely unscathed. So let's see what else, because I've talked about a lot of them. Of course, the coroner talking about, it's carnage, basically, that he's never seen before. And, Paul and Dan are in there trying to get some answers for the body of the meth lab guy that they found in the woods. And he's just like, I literally have nothing. He's like, the weirdest part is, like, the bite marks are all human. And there's nothing I can give you. And
Paul still doesn't want to believe that it's anything out of the ordinary.
Right. And then, we talked about Clint confronting Lucas in the woods by Lucas's house, continuing to be awful. So that's taken care of. But, missing person call goes out on Clint as well. So now they have all these people showing up, and then they start finding the bodies. They don't have to worry about a warrant anymore when Julia, again, decides to just go over to the Weaver house on her own and is able to find Ellen's car covered in a tarp. So that's probable cause enough. And they go and find her body in the attic. She's dead. She's all messed up. And the bony husk that used to be Frank Weaver.
Yes, except his face.
Yeah. And then they find Clint's body. Again, real bad. Luckily, we are spared from the visual of it. They don't show anything because they have to save us for the horrifying visuals and imagery we get with Aiden later, because that's even worse.
Exactly.
We can't have too much child gore and disturbing images, so save us from Clint, the bully, and we'll deal with all the Aiden stuff that will give us nightmares for forever after that. So that's fine. Yeah, no, I was like, yeah, he was a bully, but I'm still, not super excited to see decimated corpses of children. So that's fine that we don't see that. That's okay.
Not on my list either.
Yeah, no. But then, Dan saying, that boy was eaten in half, which is such a strange turn of phrase. Use a word, but eaten in half. But, okay. It sums it up.
Yeah, that... I mean, maybe if it was like Jaws.
Right.
Or bitten in half, maybe. Not eaten in half.
Right. You don't hear that very often.
No. I don't think I've ever heard it. No. Except for this movie.
All things are coming up Wendigo, but Paul is still refusing to believe it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then we get to, they take Lucas back, and Daniel's outside of the house, kind of keeping watch. And then he hears what I can only just call creepy Aiden sounds, as the kid is screaming and making weird noises. And it's just, I was like, hell to the no.
Yes, hiding in a box under a blanket. Like under a cover.
Right. And it was like a setup, because Dan goes in there and finds him, and he's like, there's a kid in here. And he's like, is it Lucas? No, it's...
Yep.
Because then he's just impaled. And then the same thing happens to when Paul gets there. Same thing happens. He goes in and he sees Aiden in the box, and he's like, oh no. And then wham, from behind. Like, he doesn't get impaled. He just gets whacked.
Yeah.
But then he just gets hit across the cabin, and then he sits up against the far wall, which leads to such an awesome little surprise attack shot. I do like that, and busting through the wall, getting him through the arm, and then slamming him against the wall a couple times to knock him out. It's like, that's cool.
Pretty. Yeah, I thought that was clever. It was definitely clever.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's really all that I had on that we haven't already talked about.
All right, you know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for a few production notes, and I did find out some cool things about how they did the Wendigo.
Nice.
Okay, so to start us off, the narration at the beginning of the film is in the Ojibwe language. It's still spoken nowadays. This movie was filmed in the same location and town as Rambo: First Blood. The Wendigo was created by Legacy Effects. And for the physical look of the Wendigo, Cooper pulled together Del Toro, Shane Mahan, and creature designer Guy Davis. They wanted this version of the Wendigo to pay homage to Native American folklore, which is deer-like with antlers. They felt that it should originate from the Earth's core, such as a coal or iron ore mine. They also wanted it to represent the destruction to natural resources, as well as a metaphor for how we as humans are destroying the planet, our bodies, minds, and souls. The design also incorporated the dirt and iron ore into the Wendigo's color, and they also utilized the colors of the elements of the earth.
Nice. To
showcase the killing of the Wendigo, i.e. cutting out its glowing heart, Shane Mahan used a gelatin piece for Kerry Russell's character Julia to cut into to reach the organ, and he had this to say: "The Wendigo doesn't really have entrails. It has brambles, thorns, and pieces of sticks and grass. That's what comes out. So the heart was in there, and it had a little smoke tube in it. It had a pumping device, and she could cut into the chest, pull the heart out, cut it free, and hold the heart in her hand. They would reset it and do a number of takes to get to the right shot, and they also did use some digital effects. But mostly it was more practical, which we're really big fans of here. We're really big fans of here at Run for Your Lives. So the head and neck of the Wendigo were above and forward from the performer's head. It was mounted to a backpack rig. The head moved independently. Shane Mahan said it was quite graceful as a puppet, but that took a while to figure out. Although they had a bunch of options for eyes, they decided to present a skull with no eyes, hinting that the Wendigo just senses where you are, doesn't look for you. For the transition of Luca's father, Frank, from human to Wendigo, they used 3 stages, altering the hair and teeth. Hayes, who played Frank, went through an intense weight loss program so that he could stick his chest out and suck in his stomach so his ribs were visible. There were no prosthetics used, only physical silicone appliances. Lead special makeup effects artist Holland Miller loved working with Scott Cooper as he was open to input from everyone. And due to pre-existing contracts with the likes of HBO, the film can't be released on streaming services or video on demand by Disney without it being released in theaters first. It could have either been put on streaming or premium video or on demand otherwise because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But that contract made it impossible, so it had to go to theaters first.
Yeah, which I don't know how many people saw it in theaters. I did. I was one of them. There wasn't a lot of people in the theater when I saw it. There was like maybe 3 other people, but
I remember
I don't know how well.
Remember we talked about this movie, like as soon as we knew of its existence, we talked about covering it right away.
Yeah, we were looking forward to its release, so we knew it would be something we would want to check out.
Absolutely. And that, Pake, is all I have.
All right.
I thought I uncovered a few cool little makeup things with the Wendigo. I'm always obsessed with how they make these things happen. If it's CGI or if it's not CGI. Because if it's not CGI, there's usually a lot of little parts and pieces that go into it, and I'm fascinated by how it all works.
Yep. All right, so we pretty much covered everything.
I think we did. We finished it. Just in time for the feedback phone.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and answer that and see what people had to say this week.
Absolutely. Let's get to it.
All right, we have a little bit of feedback this week. We've got a double dose of Tony from Twitter. Always good to hear from her. I know she was a fan of the movie we did last week, which was Reign of Fire. And so she did come through and give us a little bit of feedback on that. So Daphne, why don't you take that first? See what she had to say.
Absolutely. So Tony says, such a great movie. Matthew McConaughey's character is ridiculous. Such a macho douche. I think the dragons look great, and I think for the most part it holds up really well. The Empire scene with the kids is my favorite little scene of the whole movie. Lots of fun. And then she says, I mean, look at this dummy. And she posted this GIF file of Matthew McConaughey as Denton Van Zandt leaping off the tower to attack the dragon with the axe. Yeah. That was pretty legit, I think.
And then she also did leave us a little bit of feedback for Antlers, which we covered this week. On this one, she says, disappointed with this one. I should have enjoyed it, but it was ruined by one issue, and that was lighting. I watched this on a huge TV, no lights, and honestly had to squint through most of it. Shame, because everything else was mostly on point. Yeah, I was actually talking to a friend today. I was like, oh yeah, we're releasing our episode on Antlers tomorrow. And he was like, oh yeah, I bought it on HBO because it was like this, whatever. So how, was it good? And I said, it is very dark. And he goes, like tonally or like visually, like it's just really screen. I was like, yes.
Both of them. Both of those things for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
But yeah, I'm glad that you seem to have enjoyed at least the story elements of it. Just sorry that it was a little, covered up by the fact that you couldn't really see the story that was being told. There's some, certain movies and shows and stuff do that to add to that experience or tension. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of way too dark visually as well. I can always think of one specific.
Oh my gosh. I went there immediately after reading Tony's feedback.
I know.
I'm like, oh man, this just makes me think of that episode.
It's like, this would have been the most badass thing I've ever seen if I could have seen it. Yeah.
And think about how many people actually like ripped the video and tried to make it lighter just so that they could watch it. And it still didn't live up to what they were expecting it was going to be. Mm-hmm. It's too bad.
Yeah. So I totally get that. And then we have the return of a voicemail from Steve. He got some live Steving this week. If he does, I am very interested to see where he went, what kind of journey he went on with Antlers this week.
You know what? I'm really curious. I'm really curious as to what he thought of this. So let's not wait. We're just going to play it and hear what he had to say.
Hello, Pake and Daphne. This is Steve, and this is going to be for Antlers. Okay, I don't know what to attack these guys and where they were, but that was freaky. Always that one kid. And she is just not going to call on her, is she? I do not understand what's going on in this movie, but I'm going to keep with it. I mean, there's something behind the door, and was that a memory she was having of being a little kid when she was playing the piano? I'm confused. Okay, who or what is locked behind that door? Okay, that kind of looks like the dad, but he's more animal. I don't know what's going on. And she better not walk in that house. Well, his brother looks kind of normal, but why is he? I don't understand this movie. Is this about abused kids? Because I don't know if I can watch that right now. Did he just feed his brother? Oh, no, Amy Madigan, principal or whatever you are. You shouldn't go in the house either. Oh, what the crap. Oh, is that creature that just came out of the tree, is that his dad? Oh, another covered up car. That was a quick transition. Now they're in the house. I guess they got their warrant after she found the car. Missed something. They found Ellen's body in the attic, Frank Weaver's body in the attic, and then they said there was also a child's body in the attic. Okay, this has got even more disturbing now. Okay, so we saw the flashback with the father getting sick. He's the one that made the locked door. What? Oh, Wendigo. I love Graham Greene. The few things I've seen him in, he's really always great. Crap! He just came up behind the deputy and, oh my God. Okay, at least he didn't spear Paul through the back. He just kind of threw him aside. Oh no, it's got him now. I thought it was supposed to feed. It's just killing right now. Guess Paul is still alive. The heart. You gotta destroy the heart. He's trying to destroy the heart. What's happening with Lucas? Or I guess now something's happening with Aiden. Okay, that was disturbing. That's all I got.
Wow, Steve, that was quite an adventure that you went on with this film.
It really was. It's kind of what I was hoping for in that. Sorry to have put you through that movie. Again, if you listened to this episode, you know we liked it, but it's a lot to take. It is a heavy one for sure, and I could feel that journey that you were on with that, where you're like, "What is happening? This seems a little disturbing," and then, "Oh my God, everything is awful."
Yeah, definitely. It was a rough watch. It was not something that was warm and fuzzy. It ended in a way that just made things even worse as far as I'm concerned. But I'm glad I watched it because it was really well done. They did a fantastic job with it.
Indeed.
So if you'd like to send us feedback, like Steve or Tony, you can do so by submitting it to our Facebook page at facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. Tweet at us on Twitter at RFYL Podcast, or reach us on Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much all the other podcast players. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links you'll ever need, and give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that's the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Oh, yes, we do. And speaking of sharing the love, of course, give a little shout out to things that are going on in the podcast universe around us. Of course, our friends over at House Podcastica, still covering the Book of Boba Fett and Cobra Kai this week. So they just finished the second to last 2 episodes of Cobra Kai this week. So they will be rounding out and finishing up this new season next week. I'm excited to watch those episodes. I have not watched the final 2 episodes yet, but I'm really excited to see where they go, how they've set this up. And then Cobra Kai, that's what I just talked about. And then Book of Boba Fett this week. I don't know what to say. I don't want to spoil anything, but yes. Yes.
It was directed by someone that we, like it here at Run for Your Lives podcast. And that is Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yes.
I've heard really good things about it, so I've got to check it out.
She directed a really great episode of The Mandalorian, and then also directed a really great episode of Boba Fett, but that's what I'm going to say. And if you read between the lines, then
Yes, that is what I've heard. I have to check it out. I haven't seen it yet, so I've got to check it out.
Yeah, get on it. It's so good. And then let's see, if you are a fan of The Witcher, there's a couple of places you can go to check that out. With season 2 being out now, you can go check out TV Podcast Industries, where episodes 1 through 4 have been covered. And then also you can go to Panels to Pixels, where Steve and Laura are covering Witcher season 2 right now. And the first episode of season 2 is out. Panels to Pixels also has one other show that they are covering right now, and Daphne might know just a little something about that.
Yes. So Steve and I are covering Snowpiercer season 3. We just posted the first episode, which was titled The Tortoise and the Hare. And it had a little bit different feel to the start of the season because we had a time jump, but it was a lot of fun for Steve and I to kind of dig into that a bit. And I'm looking forward to the ride they're going to take us on this season. The music in particular in this episode was pretty amazing, so I'm excited.
So if you are watching Snowpiercer on TNT, check out their coverage of that. I'm behind on the show, but it is really good, what I've seen, and I know their coverage is very in-depth and very good, so definitely check that out.
Thank you.
And then, of course, other little things on Watched It in the 80s podcast, our friend Damien and his guest Amelie are discussing Dune. And as given the name of the podcast, Watched It in the 80s, that is the David Lynch 1884 Dune.
It
is. Which I have not seen. I've seen the newer one, and I really liked it, but I haven't gone back and watched that one. So
don't. In my honest, humble opinion, don't. I didn't like the original. I haven't seen the new one, but that's kind of what's kept me from watching the new one, is I really didn't like the original.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
But if you did, go listen to Damien and Amelie talk about it. For sure. And then lastly, on the podcast, Wilhelm, our good friend Ben Beck, breaks down his top 5 favorite Saturday morning cartoons.
That is such a question, really.
It is. And I don't know who he has as a guest on that one.
It's one of his friends who hasn't been on before. And it's not someone in our podcast circle, so I'm not really sure. What I am sure of is it's going to be a great episode.
All right. Well, perfect. And usually this will be our time where I ask you, so what's going on next week right here on Run for Your Lives? But I just had a big vacation and things have been crazy. We've run out of pre-recorded episodes. We haven't had time. So we are going to take a quick little break next week, get our shit together, and we will be back after that with something new for you. But you know what? Distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? So
of course,
miss us for a week, and then you'll be so ready for us to come back, right?
Yes, and we're getting close to the end of the season. You know what that means? Oh
yeah, we've got another Tremors movie and another Look Back special on the horizon, so those should be pretty soon within a couple episodes.
So be thinking about what some of your favorite movies and characters and monsters that we covered in the movies that we took a look at this season, because we're going to be asking for that really soon. And with that, we've reached the end of another dark and disturbing episode. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.